Inside Voices. I'm Christine Lucer, Senior Director of Solution Design at Minerva Project. This fifth edition of our conversation series features Jeronimo Prieto, Director of Development at Escuela Bancaria y Comercial, and Sean Hughes, Manager of Partner Programs at Minerva Project, and co-author of Integrating Artificial Intelligence, Key Strategies for Higher Education. Today's conversation focuses on the concrete steps universities should take to integrate generative AI and redefine the skills learners need in a world with generative AI. We're going to explore the topic from a principles-based approach and share a concrete example of how EBC is managing the process. I'm delighted to have Jeronimo and Sean, who will help us do that. Jeronimo Prieto is the Director of Development at Escuela Bancaria y Comercial, EBC, in Mexico. Since April of 2023, he has led a transformational new education plan to integrate generative artificial intelligence so that it enhances EBC's current educational model. EBC is a Minerva partner, and we're collaboratively redesigning EBC's approach to general education. Jeronimo will share tangible, specific, and practical insights for navigating change management when integrating generative AI into the learning experience. We're also joined by Sean Hughes, who is the author of the white paper, Integrating Artificial Intelligence, Key Strategies for Higher Education. Sean manages partner programs at Minerva Project, and he holds a PhD in psychology and has taught at Ghent University before joining Minerva. He will share best practices from his research and his work with Minerva partners. Let's get started. Sean, why did you write this paper? What do you want people to know?
The sector seemed to be overly preoccupied with the idea of academic integrity. In other words, how to police and ban these tools. But what we quickly came, like others, to appreciate is that's just not going to work. We can't police nor can we ban these tools at all. Instead, we need a different approach. We need to strategically and intentionally integrate those AI tools into our institutions in ways that basically enhance our capacity to teach and learn, but also make sure that our students are going out into the world with the types of skills that are going to allow them to succeed in an AI integrated workplace.
So if we pulled 3 takeaways from the paper and use that to frame this conversation, can you give them to us in sort of short bullet points?
Sure. So the paper centers on the idea of creating an AI integrated institution. And 3 key ideas would be, one, that to do that, we need a systemic and community-based approach to change. In other words, we need leadership to provide us with vision and strategy at the top, but we also need equally that process to be driven by faculty, by students, by administrators who are experiencing these issues with AI, these opportunities with AI on the ground, day in, day out. Second, I think we need to throw out or discard many of those outdated practices in teaching and assessment that we sometimes still adopt, like lectures and exams, and we need to replace them with activities and approaches that are informed and supercharged by the science of learning, but also that are enhanced with these new AI tools. And then the third and final point would be that we need to equip our students with not only the ability to creatively use AI, not only the ability to critically evaluate the output of AI, but we need them to be able to do what AI can't do. In other words, they have to have durable skills that will allow them to succeed, not only lead AI, but do things that AI cannot.
All right, so if I am summarizing that correctly, we have to teach all stakeholders about AI, right? There's this aspect of teaching students as well as faculty. And we should integrate AI tools to enhance teaching and learning. And we should use it as a moment to rethink the skills that we are actually teaching people. And one of the things I love about what you said, Sean, was doing this systemically. It's not just enough to kind of throw information at people. We really need to think about who is incentivized to use them in what ways and how we can learn from each other. Jeronimo, this is where I'd love to pull you into the conversation, because with all of the information out there, there's lots of websites, there's webinars, I've seen universities provide training, but it's all a bit generic and self-serve. It's like, there's a lot of information, we curated some of it for you. It's a good start, but I don't think I've seen a lot of places asking people to close the loop. What happens as faculty learn from this? And you're adopting a really unique and systematic approach at EBC that I'd love for you to share a bit more about.
Sure. Thank you so much. And yes, I couldn't agree more. We spent around 4 months just analyzing those generic great proposals worldwide. Great thinkers, teachers, academics all over the world are kind of hinting at the best ways of using it. And after 4 months, we decided, let's just jump in the water. So we're doing 3 major things. 1 is awareness, 2 is policy, and 3 is a feedback loop and resources. So in terms of awareness, we created a very, at least in our perspective, a very good presentation in which we really talk about what is generative AI. A lot of people are still not aware of what exactly it is. Just by the definition, people are still saying artificial intelligence. No, this is generative artificial intelligence. And what exactly this is doing to our world right now. So I think the first component is just really going back and taking the time and really explaining what exactly this is and the impact that it will have. This obviously raises a lot of eyebrows and opens a lot of questions. And the second part is giving concrete examples of how you can apply it. So for us, this is going back to my consulting background, we did a really good framework in which we said, how can you apply this before class, during class, after class, both for students and for faculty? And what we did is we did this huge town hall meeting with we have 1,000 faculty at EBC. Fortunately, 500 of them were able to participate in this great town hall meeting. And we basically said, okay, this is AI and this is how we can apply it. And we started throwing rocks at it, 500 people at the same time, to see exactly what their reactions were, how they could apply it, if they saw that this was good or bad. And collectively, which was really inspiring, most of our faculty, our last question was, would you apply AI in your class tomorrow? And the great majority were like, yes, I'm excited about this. So I think we have to really take the time, step back, explain it, put it out there, throw rocks at it, and let people really kind of immerse in it and get excited about it. Because the one thing we learned after so many webinars and experts talking to us was there really is no right answer to how to apply AI in education. Everybody has some great ideas, great approaches, but unless we really start swimming in the water with AI, there's no real way in which we're going to learn how to manage AI. So that was our first step, creating a big awareness. And we're still building on that, because that town hall meeting was not enough.
Not a one-shot kind of situation.
No. And I'll go back to that third point in saying how we're going to reinforce it. But number 2, which is really important, is policy. Super simple, but in many universities, including ours, it's a complex process to really change it and put it in words, how you can allow it, when you can allow it, and what are the expectations if you allow it. So creating those guardrails is a kind of risk management that I think is very, very important that institutions do. It'll give security for students and faculty that they're able to use it and how they're able to use it. But it's also going to incentivize a lot of people to actually use it. So taking the time and creating a good policy where you really set your guardrails. And this policy, again, there's no right answer. We're basing it off more of our core institutional philosophy and really sticking to our guts and ethics, saying we're going to risk it and we're going to put it in writing, and this is how it should be done. But it's a dangerous step, and a lot of people have to kind of validate it. But it takes time, and the sooner the better. That would be.
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
Is the policy institution-wide?
Yes, absolutely. The policy.
Can you tell us why you did that? Because I've seen lots of sample things, and it's like faculty, these independent contractors, and they can do whatever they want. But I see a lot of value in what you're doing instead of letting it be very self-serve. So why did you guys decide to go in that direction?
So we decided to do it institutional just because how we are organized institutionally, like our policy is institutional. But the key factor here is giving the faculty the last word in when AI is allowed and when it is not. So at an institutional level, yes, this is our policy. And then the faculty can decide if they can apply it or not. And then the rules, when they do apply it, that comes at an institutional level. But that gave a lot of sense of security for faculty, saying, okay, yeah, I'm allowed to use it, but I'm still in control of it. Because a lot of people are scared, a lot of people don't want to use it. But again, we have to try this little by little. If you do kind of like a tsunami type wave, it will probably be kind of dangerous. So for us, the biggest guardrail is faculty. Even though it's an institutional policy, faculty still have the right or the obligation to decide when you can use AI and when you cannot. And when it is allowed, they have to use kind of these basic principles on how to use it, when to apply it, and what to expect students when using it.
That makes a lot of sense, to balance sort of our institutional philosophy along with the agency to make it appropriate to the context for the course.
Yeah, because yes, the big issue we have now is, since we have a centralized academic system, we cannot change all of our academics from one day to another. So we're definitely going to rely on our faculty to kind of evolve on this. This is for our old educational plans. In our new ones, we're definitely implementing AI from the get-go. So that's number two. The third one is kind of our feedback loop and resources, okay? So there is no right way of doing this. So the most important thing is how faculty are using it, trying it out, and then reporting back at a centralized area, which we already organize with chats and with people, etc., and kind of getting those really good insights on where it really worked and where it didn't work. Again, we are still in the philosophy that, yeah, that's great, let's use it. Nobody can really pinpoint how to use it exactly. Let's just use 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 examples to get it right. Because I'm sure we're going to boil it down to maybe 50 or 100 concrete ways in which we can use it, which is very effective. That really kind of goes with our institutional values to say this is actually a better way of learning. But finding those 100 gems is going to be really hard. And we're doing a collective effort organized at a central level and kind of just pouring all the information in and really going one by one, saying this works, and after repeated effort, saying, okay, you know what, this exercise using AI is much better if we didn't use AI. Let's just do it institutionally. But it's
so you're talking about having a couple hundred really good examples, which means that you have a pretty big sample size amongst the faculty. Tell us a little bit about the scale of EBC. How many students, how many faculty?
Yep. So we're about 15,000 students, ranged around 13 different geographical locations, and 1,000 faculty. And that's kind of that's our volume. The really hard part is there's huge differences between faculty in, say, Chiapas, Tuxtla Gutierrez. Whoever knows, Mexico is a very kind of remote, culturally different area than maybe San Luis Potosí, which is in the northern part of Mexico. So you do have regional differences, cultural differences. Some areas are much more kind of stuck with the traditional educational model. Some are more open to it. And we kind of have to balance that out slowly but surely. But that's kind of our situation, how we're managing it.
I mean, this is one of the most important things when I've worked with partners, is really truly understanding the context, because you can come in and say, these are the great things that we all want to do. And then it really comes down to executing at the level of change management. And so we'll dig into this as we go through, but I'm really excited to hear more about where you're seeing those differences create opportunities for exploration, but also create challenges. When we think about that systemic level, Sean, when you have been putting together these papers and your thoughts and working with partners, do you get to that level of conversation? Have you seen other people trying to push the community aspect? How do we get the feedback and learn? Or has it mostly been, we'll provide some guidance and people will figure it out?
I think to build on Jeronimo's point, it varies from partner to partner, institution to institution. Sometimes it's very top-down heavy, where the central leadership will dictate a set of policies, set of steering committees, and then push down. And others, and I actually appreciate that systemic community-based approach at EBC, because it takes the best of both worlds. I think you do need strategic leadership who have the capacity and vision to recognize that different stakeholders have different perspectives in the institution, admissions, recruitment, student support services, teaching, learning. Each of them might be using AI in a different way. And so at the top line level, you do need a systemic, consistent perspective on it. But then I think, as Jeronimo was saying, you also need to recognize that each of those different stakeholders uses AI in fundamentally different ways. And you need to basically take almost like a selection by consequence approach. What works, what doesn't, retain what works, discard what doesn't. And then I agree with this third point, which is this idea of a feedback mechanism, that you don't silo that knowledge within one stakeholder, one faculty member, one student, one department, but you create some sort of loop that feeds that experience, that knowledge back into the system, into the institution. And so that you supercharge, I guess, that change process. So I think I really do like that EBC model, genuinely.
To me, it comes down to leadership and buy-in, right? You cannot control the different ways that people are going to use these things, but you can be very clear about what the philosophy is for the institution and why it's that way. You can set the stage, like doing this grand experiment, and making it really clear to people that we want this to be a learning experience. So, Jeronimo, what if we got into some of these details about actually making the rubber hit the road? How are you collecting the data? How is it going to be shared back? What does that look like for somebody who wants to emulate this systems leadership approach?
That's a good question. So the way we're doing it right now is, okay, so we kind of said, okay, the hounds are loose, like some faculty are using it, no? And we're contacting the faculty every 2 or 3 weeks and then kind of reporting, like, it's a tedious work, but we have to put resources into it and saying, okay, how did you use it? Was it successful or was it not? But what's helping a lot is that we sent them kind of right now we have our basically 40 good ways of using AI in a course. And what we're trying to say is, okay, which one did you use? How did you use it? Would you change it? And would you report back on that example, no? And we have to collect that one by one. And then once we centralize it, if we start getting kind of the repetition of saying, you know what, faculty are constantly using number 3 and number 5. Number 4, somebody used it and it was a complete disaster, no? And so it's basically a very sophisticated database in which we're mapping out which one is working, which one is not. But I think the important thing here is nobody's lost. Since we have so many faculty and we have to kind of collaborate between the central and kind of the local is just saying, okay, here are the examples, use it. And then we'll ask the questions, we'll organize it, we'll sort it out, and we'll say, and hopefully in 6 months' times, we'll say, this is the new version of the best ways to use AI. So we have this kind of, like, we're calling it the AI Bible, which we're mapping all these concrete examples. The important thing is how you map it, how you organize it. Everybody's clear on what type. We even have like color codes in which, like, if it's a normal example, it's a blue, we call it a blue. If it's an extraordinary way of using AI, we call it a red. We put more attention for the reds, anyways, we have all these like kind of system in which it's going to be a really hard social learning experiment, but we have to map it, and it's going to take time. I hope somebody does it before us and then we can copy it, but I don't see anybody doing it, no? So we just decided, let's do it.
I mean, that's the attitude we need, right? That's what leadership does. It comes in and says, there is a gap here, and we have an idea about how to fill it. And it might not be the perfect way, but it's going to be better than everyone going in all of these different directions and us not learning anything. I think this comes to a place where I want to transition to talking about how people are using it. You said you want to create that database of the really good ways. Sean, what are some principles that could guide that?
Good question. I think when we partner up with our partners, we basically try to advise them to keep 2 general principles in mind when it comes to AI. The first is that there are certain cases where our students are going to be tempted to mindlessly use AI. That is, mindlessly export the difficult productive struggle that is learning to a tool that will produce a decent quality response and maybe get them a passing grade. And because those tools are generating content that really can't be detected, at least very reliably, students may also be tempted to submit that material as their own. So basically, the first principle we advocate for is that when we need to adopt our teaching and assessment practices in ways that minimize mindless AI use, but also minimize inappropriate AI use. And then at the same time, we also recognize that there's many more cases where we do want our students to intentionally use AI to supercharge their learning. And so this brings us to the second principle we advocate for, which is that we do want to encourage and allow for AI whenever it meaningfully enhances teaching, learning, and assessment. I can stop here and go into examples, but there are 2 guiding principles.
I love those, right? So don't use it in a bad way, but embrace it for a good way. Jeronimo, how does that jive with the philosophy at EBC?
It's a great question. So our philosophy is we're students for forever, no? Estudiantes para siempre. I think what Sean says is super important to you. How do you distinguish between kind of like how AI is kind of a detractor for education, how AI is a promoter for a better learning experience? And I think it's going to be really hard, but I think it goes back to the faculty. Faculty right now are going to live it. There's this new toy. I think our philosophy is just be excited about it, use it. It's okay if we break it. It's okay if it doesn't work. Sometimes it's going to work. But once we do, that's the only way to really create a centralized and really objective way of saying, okay, now this is the way we can use generative AI. Right now, I think we're at a phase where we have to just use this toy, break it, try different ways, challenge it, experiment with it. Honestly, that's been their philosophy in how they created OpenAI, their own software. I think we're copying that philosophy as well. They don't even know exactly, obviously there are 10 levels above us, no, but applied to education, I think we have to do that same experiment, that same philosophy. We just have to use that toy as much as possible until we get it right.
I think this is a really, really great set of guiding principles. And I want to get down to sort of the nitty gritty. So, Sean, if we're going to encourage faculty to do specific things, what are the kinds of things we're encouraging our partners to think about?
Sure. So if we think about that first principle where we want to minimize mindless or inappropriate AI, then we probably want to go and conduct an AI audit of our courses. In other words, we want to feed that content to those tools and determine what level, what sophistication of results that they produce, and then use that data as a signal whether we need to update or revise our instructional or assignment design. We all know that AI tools are spectacular at generating written content. So personally, we're recommending that partners place an even heavier emphasis on active learning techniques. So if you think about it, debates, role plays, simulations are all types of learning experiences that require the students to turn up, socially interact, and to critically and creatively think on their feet. And those types of activities kind of make it difficult for the student to just stop, turn to a computer, input a prompt, wait for a response, and then turn back again. So if the aim is really to minimize mindless AI use, then I think a heavier emphasis on those dynamic, fast-paced, fully active learning techniques. And then finally, again, because AI is spectacular at generating written content, it can do a really good job of passing an exam for you or submitting or producing an essay. So I think we need a mindset shift. We need to shift to less away from high stakes, summative assessments like exams and essays, and more towards formative types of assessment, like experiential assignments or authentic assignments. In other words, put our students out into the world, so location-based assignments, or partner them up with a local partner, and then set them a real-world challenge that matters to that community, to that location, and then iteratively assess not just some learning product at the very end, but our students' capacity to update their thinking, revise their thinking, solve that problem, and demonstrate that it's me who is refining and applying my skills across time and context, rather than just submitting an essay at the end.
Jeronimo, I saw you nod a lot when Sean was talking about active learning. Can you give us some examples of active learning activities that might incorporate AI?
Sure. So I think one of the most interesting examples we've tried now in a classroom is what Sean was saying in terms of getting a different perspective. So it's going to sound very simple, but once we tried it out, it got really interesting as we went forward. So one of the best things about a classroom is when you have enriched in different perspectives. No, you have a case problem or a case study, and everybody's like throwing rocks at different perspectives. But ultimately, what happens is our students, they come from a very similar culture. They all live in the same city. They kind of have that same perspective, no? So one way which we're now incorporating AI is for a specific case example. How do you get real-time different perspectives that can enhance how you would approach that specific case? And there's two ways of doing it. One very specific is you ask students to say, guess what? AI can now read for you 5 or different perspectives, make them do that summary for you, and now you act as a role play, as saying, okay, you come from Europe, and now, and say from Spain, and now you have to add this perspective to the classroom, assuming this sort of role play, no? And they're going to be like, oh my God, no, I'm going to have to read 10 PDF documents. No. Click AI and make them give it to you in one pager, no? And so automatically, this whole experience of getting this very international, different perspective on, for example, a case study, you can automatically enhance it by both role playing and by using AI to kind of really get a lot of information in a single class, real time, real fast. So that for us has been kind of a game changer in terms of, okay, this can really enhance our class experience from zero to nothing. No, the other thing, not that much as an active learning, but just, you know, when we have certain activities, especially programming for some of our students can be very challenging right now. They all know it's there. It's kind of that shadow that you have to know programming, but I'm so scared about it. But now with AI, you can really experiment with it really fast, because the really hard part about programming when you didn't have AI is you had to do it, and kind of it would take several hours to kind of see exactly what you programmed in the real world examples that you created. No, so now just a simple, you know, do a project about a new product or whatever. We're including kind of these, okay, now we're going to expect more from our students. Now you're going to have to do a landing page, you're going to have to do a Python or whatever website. And we're really enhancing the whole programming, and it's really easy to learn programming applied with AI. So that's another really concrete example in which we're saying, you know, simple examples in our business courses, which is kind of create a product, create a design, create something. You can now enhance it, and you don't have to wait 3 or 4 courses that you learn programming. You can just instantly ask it to program it for you, and you can instantly see the results. And is it going to be perfect? No, but that's much better than not doing it if you had the opportunity to just do it. No.
This reminds.
Yeah.
Finish. Go ahead.
No. That's the other example that I thought of has been really impactful in the way we're applying it right now.
I think one of the reasons why it's really impactful is because it's doing what the calculator did for math. Right? People were really scared the calculator is going to make everyone stupid. It actually lets you do a different kind of math, right? It frees up time if you can use it as a tool that gets you to a place, and then push people to think critically about the output, to use it to solve real problems. And that's where I think we can start to embrace what I'm going to call durable, transferable skills, things that are going to be useful no matter what happens in the world, because they teach us how to think creatively, they teach us how to think critically. And I think if we embrace AI, it ends up freeing up some bandwidth to be able to focus on those skills. And we've always known that those skills are important, but this feels like a critical moment that could shake up that ecosystem. So when we think about those sorts of things that we might be teaching in the classroom, Jeronimo, I know this is important to you at EBC. What are your thoughts about why this becomes even more important in an AI integrated world?
I think yes, us as universities and as professionals, we have to teach durable, permanent skills. I think that is obvious for I think many of us. But I think what's really interesting is which of these skills are going to be more relevant in a future which AI is obviously going to be integrated. And I know we were having this discussion before, and all I have now is just perspectives, and this is just my personal individual opinion because I have no evidence to back it up. But I think there's going to be a shift in what skills are going to be more valued in the future. Today, at least in our ecosystem in the business world, a very analytical person is someone who's very sought after by banks, by consulting firms. You know, you can solve math problems, you can do databases, you can do data analysis. You know, that's a skill that's very valued in the market today. But with AI, that skill might be challenged by other skills, which is creative prompting. How creative are you? How much can you challenge AI to get you a result that you need? And if you apply it to a consulting or a finance situation, we might be getting ourselves into a different situation in which maybe creative skills are going to kind of make a comeback in the future, in the near future. But again, this is my individual opinion on what we're seeing on concrete examples. I'm saying how you're applying your brain, your skills to these new examples when you integrate AI.
Sean, I'd love to pull you in here and not talk just about what skills, but how you might think about teaching them. So creativity feels like this thing that's pretty abstract. So if we said we want to create creative thinkers, what could we do to really make sure that that's the goal we're trying to help students embrace?
Take your point. Just to quickly build on Jeronimo's point, today there was a wonderful white paper out by the World Economic Forum, and they divide the jobs of the future into three groups. One is highly automated. AI will likely replace, highly augmented, AI augmented, and third, that is highly resistant to being replaced by AI. And those durable skills that Jeronimo was talking about, creativity, critical thinking, others as well, like, for example, the capacity to ethically and morally reason, or to lead and work with others in emotionally intelligent ways, they're the ones that are most resistant to being made redundant by AI. But to get those skills, you need to transform.
Yeah, what do we do?
Yeah, exactly, right? You need to, well, I think you need a fundamentally different model. You need a model that's centered around identifying what those skills are, right? Identifying for your institution, your mission, your values, looking to the market, what set of skills do you think are highly important for you? Two, build a curriculum around that idea. You need a scaffolded curriculum that introduces those skills, simple and then complex, and then centers the entire educational journey around it. You need teaching that isn't a lecture where you just transmit knowledge at students. You need to flip the classroom. So students think about those skills before, but when they come to the classroom, the whole point, the whole aim of the game is to allow them to far transfer them, to apply them, to push and pull their understanding in different contexts. And then you also need to change what assessment looks like. It's no longer good enough to give them a summative single grade at the end of a course. You need to help them refine, master, develop those skills day in, day out. And that requires formative feedback. It requires getting low stakes assignments, repeated assignments that provide students with useful information that allow them to grow. So it requires a fundamental shift in the way that we traditionally, the educational model that we traditionally utilize.
This was one of the things we connected with Jeronimo early on when we first started talking with you at EBC, was really trying to rethink the way that we make sure people are prepared for what happens after university. Can you tell us a little bit about the thought process of going back and rethinking that at EBC?
Sure. So for our new academic plans, we usually spent around, I don't know, maybe 30 to 40 hours with 3 or 4 big companies that hire a lot of our EBC students, no? And one of the big changes we did was we expanded that to probably 70 or 80 companies and spent from 30 to 40 hours, we spent maybe 1,500 hours, no? Because answering that question is very difficult. As an institution, we are responsible to answer that question thoroughly, because at least in our institutional philosophy, we want to create professionals that distinguish themselves in their organizations. So we have to really go to those organizations and say, how are people going to distinguish themselves? And so those 1,000+ hours of discussion really led us to the conclusion we had on saying, okay, this is what feels like is the future. And the two things that we discovered is some things never change, but then since we did this process through more than 1 year, it was 2 years, that like institutions, I mean, organizations, they change kind of the flavor of the month. Now, right now it's like, oh, data analysis. Then it's going to be like, oh, English is super important. And then
you need to know prompt engineering.
Prompt engineer now is tomorrow, no? But what's behind that, no? And so that goes back to one of our main philosophies, like students, for example. That some things are going to be constantly changing, but what are the things that really never change, no? Teamwork, critical thinking, creative thinking. Those constantly were at the bottom of these conversations always. Like if you trace back and try to identify those, you would clearly see that those were like fundamental, no? And so that's where we're putting our emphasis in our new academic plans.
That's really helpful. And I think one of the things that is unique about Minerva's work with EBC and the model we embrace with Minerva Partners more broadly is breaking those things down to granular, accessible units. Right? This is the thing. We don't just say, hey, be good at teamwork and put people in groups. We say being good at teamwork means understanding an underlying concept like power dynamics. And an AI can tell you what power dynamics are, but it can't necessarily show you how to use them in a wide range of situations, or at least not how you're going to have to calculate that in the moment on your first job. And so when we go back and think about how we're going to prepare people for a world where they still have to do very human things, coming back and using this as a moment to say, what makes us uniquely human can be a really, really powerful intervention. So I think of this advent of generative AI being in the hands of so many people, not necessarily as something where AI is going to reshape everything and that's the thing we have to respond to. It's AI is changing the way that we work and interact. And how does that give us a little bit of breathing room to reset the stage on focusing on the things that are really important for our learners? How do we use as a moment to be more student-centric? I want to make sure we have time to get to questions. We're going to hop there in about 2 minutes, but I want to give each of you a chance to give the audience a takeaway so far. Of all the things we've talked about, we've hit on making sure that you educate everybody about what generative AI is. We've hit on the idea that you can use it to enhance teaching and learning and really shouldn't be scared of it, but excited by the opportunities. And on this idea that generative AI is a moment in time where we can rethink what the purpose of education is and move it more towards a durable, transferable skills approach. Those have been really great insights. If you want people to have one thing that they're taking away from this conversation, I'll go to Sean first.
Okay, one thing. Then I'd say maybe that the traditional model that's still prevalent around the world, so this idea that we have to teach our students what to think via lectures and then test that by exams, was broken before AI came along, and I think it's really not equipped for an AI era. I think we need to start thinking about a new model that is skills-based, what we discussed today, and it centers on giving students the skills that allow them to creatively use AI, critically evaluate its content, but also go beyond what AI can do. And that is basically, for me, ethically and morally reason, lead, work, collaborate with others in emotionally intelligent ways. We have to give them durable skills. I think AI can help our institutions do that, to transform in this way and to meet those goals.
And Jeronimo.
More of a practical approach. Main takeaway is we probably know a lot about generative AI. Just because you're here, you're probably interested and you've heard a lot about it. But I assure you that the majority of the people in your institution are still at a very low understanding of what generative AI and what it's doing and what it can and possibly will do in the world. And so my first thing that I would recommend is take the time to go back in your institutions and really make sure that everyone's kind of in the same frequency as you are probably right now. The second is I've searched all over the world to get concrete examples on how to apply AI and how to enhance teaching. I can count them with the number of fingers I have in my hand. And the great conclusion I've had after all these webinars and experts and whatever it is, there really is no right way of how you're going to apply generative AI in your classroom. Our recommendation is you have to just jump in the water and do it in a systemically and ethically way in which you're going to learn a lot and then really see the best ways in how to apply it. Option A. Option B, be patient. Your students are already using AI. They're going to be using it for, sadly, really bad purposes, which is making their life easier. And if you're patient, that's going to happen. And eventually, there's going to be great papers on how you apply it and how it's going to be enhanced. But my recommendation to you would be, this is one of those things where it's going to be really hard to catch up. Because in 6 months, what ChatGPT is going to be launching a new version or whatever, and you're always going to be kind of one step behind. And so my recommendation is don't be afraid. It's an exciting toy. If we do it ethically, we have to try it out systematically. In our case, consolidate the information. And eventually we're going to see the best ways in which we can use it. The same way that we use the calculator, the internet, any other huge technological shift that has happened in education. So my recommendation is don't be afraid. Let's just use it. We're probably going to have a lot more fun using it than being afraid of it.
I think that that's really true. And the fun is what's going to make it catch on, right? We're going to start using it more productively if there's clear leadership giving people guidelines to experiment and learn and feed that back into the system. I want to extend a big thank you to our panelists and participants for being here today. To learn more about EBC and Minerva's other innovative partners and to connect with our team, please visit minervaproject.com or click the link in the podcast description. We appreciate you listening.